Some of the content may be more adult-based, and of course we want to ensure that if any children are watching or listening, that parents take the time to explain thoroughly any questions that they may have or any specific dialogue that they may have heard that children may not necessarily be accustomed to.
Greetings. We'd like to welcome you all to the first of 10 episodes of the Resolving Family Conflicts Live Web Series. I'm Robert Davis, one of the co-hosts, along with my esteemed co-host, Felicia Simone. We'd like to welcome you all to the Black Dot, and we're looking forward to an exciting, informative, and educational episode tonight. We'd like to talk to our esteemed guest, Mr. James Brown, who is a probation officer of 20 years at DeKalb County, and is now the Community Service Coordinator, along with Mr. Kevin McNeil, who's a former SVU detective, author and founder of the 12 Project. Our objectives for the web series are that viewers would see the need for spending time with family and conversing about topics that are often discussed before they have the potential to become conflicts. Also, that the viewers would understand family members' desire to share information if fear, shame, prejudice, tradition, and like factors were not predetermined assumptions. Also, that the viewers would be given ideas and resources of how to engage family members. And also, the struggle with sharing family conflicts would be encouraged. And finally, that viewers will use these conflicts to seek opportunities to win and renew relationships within our families and our communities.
Great. So those are our objectives. Those are things that we hope to accomplish out of all of our web series, but specifically this one. Okay? And what we definitely want to ensure is that we're listening. This is a safe space. And we brought this together because we wanted to ensure that we were listening, because we know the lack of listening is often what leads to epidemics like these happening. Okay, so we want to make sure that we're definitely listening. We want to be very, very clear about not using any terms that could be offensive, not any phrases that someone could take as an insult. So before you ask a question or pose a question, just be mindful of those things, again, because we are talking about very sensitive topics. Okay? And finally, no statements will be assumed to be absolute. Okay? Facts, we throw that word around a lot, but we want to make sure that we are clear that any conversation or dialogue that's being had here, that it's opinion-based. It's your opinion. It's our panelists' opinion. We are facilitators. We are not counselors. We do have the luxury of having some certified folks in the house with us today, and we're grateful about that, but we may not necessarily be able to answer any questions that you may have. But we do have a resource table that provides detailed information about places and other resources that you may be able to utilize that could be helpful as well. And let's see. I think that's it. I think that was a lot, right? Okay. All right. So we're going to now introduce our sponsors. We're going to say thank you very quickly to our sponsors, then introduce our panel guests. One of our first sponsors is Dr. Tracy Powell, and she's with PracticalLeadershipForYou.com. She's an author, speaker, and transformation coach, and she helps her clients to uncover and activate their leadership capabilities and transform their stories and ideas into books and successful businesses. And we give Dr. Tracy Powell a round of applause. Another one of our partners is Shakita Robinson Bruce from Open Arms Counseling Center. And Mrs. Robinson Bruce, her company is dedicated to helping African American women overcome shame, anger, and heal from past hurt in order to live their best lives. If we could give a round of applause to Shakita Robinson. And I'll go through some of our other sponsors and partners. We have Helen Bohanna and Bohanna Marketing and Consulting Agency. We have John Brown from Philly Go Flow, the phillygoflow.com radio show. We also have Darlene Jackson from Legacy Hope Group. Darlene's in the building. You can give her a hand. And we also have Sincere, who's going to give us some poetry. Sincere's in the building. Thank you for your partnership. And of course, we have Real Talk to You. Where is he? Oh, okay, there he is. Real Talk to You. Thank you so much. He's one of our media sponsors. And we have some travel agents from IntelliTravel who are also in the building. Wendy and Paul, are you in the back?
Yes.
Thank you so much for being here. So we're super excited about that, but we're going to go ahead and talk to our panelists, which is the reason that we're here today, since they've been so kind to grace us with their stories. And Rob is going to introduce them for us.
And first, before we start, we definitely need to give these new friend to the left, Mr. Kevin McNeil.
Yes,
I'd like for you to just introduce yourself and tell a little bit about yourself and what you do, and tell people your story.
Yes, I'm Kevin McNeil. I'm originally from Memphis, Tennessee. I was formerly a DeKalb County Special Victim Detective. I was a DeKalb officer for 20 years, a detective for 12 of those years. Recently, I resigned in 2017 to start my own business called the 12 Project. And that's basically a company I started to educate the public on the effects of abuse. The police department told me that I couldn't advocate and do my job at the same time, so I had to choose. So they gave me an ultimatum, and I gave them that badge, and I've gone back and told them I'd rather advocate full time because I was putting people in jail, and so, but I felt called to freedom. And so, and one of the things that caused me to do that was my own personal history. I was an officer for 20 years, detective for 12 years. Not once did I think about what happened to me when I was 12 years old. At 12, I was walking home from a friend's house. I decided to take a shortcut to get home on time because I was past curfew, and a man appeared out of nowhere, came up out of the football stadium, and abducted me and dragged me into the football stadium. And he beat me, continued to beat me, and once he was done beating me, he sexually assaulted me. Once he was done sexually assaulting me, he got on top of me, put his hands around my neck, began to squeeze, and tried to kill me. I knew I didn't want to be found dead on the dog bleacher, so at 12 I fought this grown man off. I fought him off. When I fought him off, I ran all the way home. Ran into the street. Cars began to, swerve left and right, thinking that I was attempting to commit suicide, but nobody stopped. Nobody stopped. And so as a young 12-year-old, I had to go to a shopping mall, a shopping plaza to get home. And I had on no shirt, no shoes. I was bleeding, mixed with mud, and nobody even stopped to ask what was wrong with me. So I continued to walk home. When I got home, my mom looked at me and she said, "What happened?" And I'm 12. I'm a 12-year-old boy, and I was already suffering from bullying in school. So I couldn't dare tell my mom that the first time a man ever embraced me was to sexually assault me, and a stranger at that, right? So I told my mom I was robbed. And so she offered to call the police, but I said, "No, Mom, don't call the police," because I knew if the police came, they would probably get the truth out of me. So for 30 years, I walked around with that pain. I walked around with that secret. And the interesting thing was I was a police officer carrying a loaded gun with suicidal thoughts for 20 years, and nobody knew it. Many people didn't know that I had to hide my service weapon in the closet when I laid down because I was having suicidal thoughts as a police officer. And the hope was by the time I walked from my bed to my closet, I wouldn't blow my brains out. And people often ask me as a police officer, what was your greatest fear? And I often tell them, they thought it was somebody shooting at me or me getting killed in the line of duty. And I often tell them it was getting home after my shift. That was the most dangerous time for me because I didn't like the man that was looking back at me in the mirror. And so that led me to therapy and I kept that secret, and it led to a bunch of behaviors that I didn't understand at the time. But when I started studying trauma and the effects of trauma on the brain, I educated myself on that. That's when I really became involved in trying to train detectives and police officers how to understand victimology, understand how victims process information. And of course, the police department didn't want it. So I continued to train myself. And as a result of that, I taught a group of nurses about the effects of trauma. And the first time I told my story, it was a healing experience. And it wasn't so much me telling my story, it was my story being heard. Because being heard leads to being healed. When I felt that there was an atmosphere, a space for my story, for me to tell it than the trauma that I had trapped inside of my brain, my survival brain. Talking enabled me to have my brain reintegrated again. So I was living a fragmented life, fragmented existence. My body made it out of those bleachers. My spirit, that little boy, was still stuck under those bleachers. And the reason I say that because the interesting thing, the next 4 years of my life after that assault, I played high school, ran football, ran track in that very same stadium, not once did I think about it. And I walked past those very same bleachers every day. And so a death occurred. And so one of the things I emphasize is that abuse not only happens one time, it's not that abuse happens, it's what happens when it happens. And oftentimes the reason I quit my job as a law enforcement officer is because law enforcement is responsive. We wait till things happen and then we show up, right? And so I was more on the prevention side, And so my thing was a lot of the violence and the things that we're seeing on today are symptoms. And I believe that the abuse that the violence we're seeing on today is the abuse that we ignored on yesterday. So that's my story and that's my passion.
So, Mr. McNeil, in your story, you did mention that you got therapy.
Yes.
At what point in your life, or what was the catalyst that brought you to the point that said, you know what, I need some help. Something is broken. I need to be fixed.
It was. That's ironic. It wasn't a male. It was the power of a woman. I was man. I never knew it, but I was drinking heavily. I was promiscuous. I was using sex as a tool to numb my pain, and I got engaged to this female who just looked at me and said, "You're never present." And I was like, "What? I'm right here. What are you talking about?" And she was like, "I can't do this with you. You're not here. Like, I can never get through to you." And so I didn't know what she meant by that. And so as a result of that, the engagement got broke off, and it was at that time that I had to seek help. I was like, wait a minute, all of my relationships are going in the same pattern. Like, I couldn't connect with people outside of myself. It's because I couldn't connect with who I was. And so I was hiding my true self and living a life that wasn't even mine. And so as a result of that, when I went to therapy, a female led me there, but I went to a male therapist, and it was interesting of our encounter. The first 10 minutes, he just sat and looked at me and didn't say anything. And I thought that was weird. It was like, so he was like, "Do I make you uncomfortable?" I said, "Yes." And he was like, "Well, I can tell you're not comfortable around males. You don't trust males." And just in that 10-minute space, he picked that up about me and allowed me to do work. And he put me to work and allowed me to do the work to heal, and not trying to give me advice or telling me how I should feel or what I should do, but just gave me some recommendations on reading. And that led to me, studying and definitely learning about what abuse did to my brain, because that allowed me to know that I wasn't a bad person. Something bad happened to me. Mm-hmm. And so that was the start of it, seeing my relationships, no matter what they were. And then even my family relationships, man, I didn't know I lived in an abusive household until then. When I started learning about the effects of abuse, and when I started learning about the effects of abuse, it explained everything. Why my brothers, my two older brothers, were now addicted to drugs and alcohol, growing up in a domestic violence family, and how that altered the chemistry and the wiring of my brain and caused me to make decisions and think of the world in a certain way. So that's how it started. It was with pain. Yeah, a broken heart. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I really appreciate your willingness to share your story. Is I'm sure you know, because you do this all over the country now, how powerful it is.
Thank you.
If we could just segue to Mr. Makadu quickly, because he took the time out of his schedule to come, and he does have a prior engagement. Would you mind just coming up and... And would you just give us about 5 minutes or so and share your story with us, and just, enlighten the audience of how you've gotten to where you are today?
Okay, I can do it. How y'all doing tonight?
All right.
I was happened to be I was about 8 years old, and and I was being groomed, and I didn't realize what that really was, but it was with a female the first time it happened, and she would play with me, and then finally she took advantage of me, and it just took my brain, my mind to a whole nother stratosphere. I couldn't even think straight. I was in a position where we had to choke back up to this building again with my mother, and I was saying, I don't want to go. And you know, my mother was a thug, so it was nothing I could do. She would just say, come on, you're going, you know, and it just continued, and it continued for years. But the thing that I was real destructive after that. I mean, I was real destructive. I can remember that, and but my mind started to evolve into economics. For some strange reason, my mind started to, I started to focus on economics and money and stuff like that. And I began to train myself how to build capital for myself and how to really basically do things that, because my family was living in a poverty state of mind, and I just always was thinking about prosperity. But then again, a couple of years later, then my uncle molested me, and he groomed me, and that was more devastating to me because, you know, he was my uncle, you know, and that was weird. At 13, and coming from the abuse, because my mother was, you know, she was very violent. I'm writing a book about it now, and the whole family was violent. We just had a violent upbringing, a lot of beatings, a lot of, you know, verbal. You know, my mother used to tell me, "I should have flushed you down the toilet when I had a chance," and it you know, it just took me back, and I was like, wait a minute, you know, and at 13 I was going to kill myself, and it just as I'm at that point not doing it, I realized that my mother had said that to my brothers, so it was like, wow, she said that to my brothers as well, so it wasn't like it wasn't as. It started to calm me down, and I remember just realizing, you know, screaming out, "Please help me, Lord help me," and I just got to a point where I started to calm down. I said, "I'm smarter than all of you," you know. But before that, it was like, "Y'all are gonna miss me. You're gonna miss me when I'm gone." I have a razor in my hand, this wrist up, ready to just carve deep down inside my wrist, and just after I didn't kill myself, it was just I had to live with that whole experience for all those years. I mean, 50-something, it finally came out. I had to prove to myself over and over again that the promiscuous, of course, you know, and I had to prove that I was a male. And see, now my uncle, he wanted me to penetrate him, and that's when everything kind of stopped for me. And I said, "Don't put your hands on me again." And the reason, and I protected him for so long, and because I knew my family was going to kill him. I knew they would kill him and I knew if that happened, that was going to be on me. I knew I didn't know really what was going to happen, to be honest, but I knew they were going to kill him. And I had got a whiff of it when my mother passed away. I spoke to one of my stepbrother, and I told him what happened. And now at this point, I'm like 57 years old. And he said, "Well, you're lucky you didn't tell me." And I said, "Why?" And I wanted to hear the reason why. He said, "Because I would have killed him." And I knew it. And I said, I would have lost a brother, I would have lost my stepfather, I would have lost probably one or two of my uncles, because they these guys operate as a gang. You know, my mother's brothers, and they would have killed them. And so for being 50-something, I ended up realizing after the 5th divorce that I had major problems. And being married 5 times, you know, it played some tricks on my mind. And I realized it wasn't for therapy, I probably wouldn't even be standing here right now. You know, I needed help. And I'm getting ready to go back into therapy now so I can really get to know myself a lot better. And me writing a book now is really getting me, well, I've been over the last couple of years been telling this story, slowly but surely it's coming out, and it's just been like so much more relaxing because now today I get to now see there's other men, you know, that's had some experiences as well, and I feel even more free now that I heard somebody else's story. I've been telling my story for the last years, you know, so here I am, and I'm just glad against molestation and rape and things of that nature, and I'll fight to the end. I'll be doing this for the rest of my life, till the day I die, is helping God's people, so I'm happy.
That's an amazing story. And again, we literally just met Mr. McAdoo today. But he felt compelled, you know, to come and share his story, and we are so very appreciative. Yeah, you know, it feels like an obligation. It sounds like it's an obligation. And that's major within itself, because, you know, we know that there are so many folks who aren't comfortable yet coming out of their silence.
Yes, and I know, and God's going to use all of us to get there.
Absolutely.
And we're going to break evil back with this. I mean, it's a whirlwind. We're going in full ride, gentlemen. And we're going to be ready to help a lot of people worldwide that's been waiting for us for years and years and years. And people in dealing with suicide is at an all-time high, and most of the molestation, a lot of it is coming through the youth and the young adults. They're molesting each other, and these kids are not telling the stories, and they're killing themselves at a very young age now. And so we gotta stop them now before it gets too rampant.
We have work to do.
A lot of work.
And we thank you again. We thank you so much for sharing this. We have met so many folks. You know, and I mentioned in the disclaimer that we are facilitators. You know, I made sure I wrote that down so I did not forget to say it, so no one, you know, comes up assuming anything. But as we were canvassing the neighborhood and letting folks know exactly what we were intending to do, you know, people just felt compelled to tell their stories. And I literally was at the Office Depot just last weekend sharing our event with a young lady, and she told me about her 3-year-old daughter that was molested and had contracted gonorrhea. And, you know, I literally was in Office Depot crying, you know, because you believe these kind of things may happen, but to physically hear it coming from, that was her child, you know, and the things that you say that you think about, you know, and what runs through your mind. I looked at all of your faces, and I could imagine that you were all saying, oh no, not my child, you know, or I'm not sure if that person would have made it through the next day, you know, but those are things that we have to ensure that we're having conversations. We have to have a dialogue about this so we can ensure that we are breaking some of these vicious cycles. You know, so again, we are so appreciative of the gentlemen who have come up to share their stories with us. And we're going to give Mr. Brown an opportunity to share his story as well.
Thank you very much. Good evening to all of you. Thank you for having me. I'm a little bit nervous here, but I'm going to go ahead and give you my truth, my version of what my life has entailed. Again, I'm James Brown. I'm with the DeKalb County State Court Probation Department. Been there for over 20 years, about 24 years. Started in adult probation, still there in the same department, but now I'm actually working with the Community Service Department, primarily dealing with adult felony probation and misdemeanor. Primarily on the weekends, we get together after community service is done. And I think a lot of visions, a lot of things are born out of pain, out of your own lives, if you will. And we have what we call a rap session for the defendants. And I've learned that a lot of people come in under the guise of anger and pain, and you don't really know why. They have the symptoms, and you're trying to figure out why do they have this disposition, what's really going on in their lives. So I've been at the other end of probation, if you will, or law enforcement, being able to talk to people, being able to understand what their lives are and what their lives entail, and understanding that everybody comes with a story. So let me give you part of my life, part of my version of what's been going on in my life. I'm originally from Akron, Ohio. The baby of 4 siblings, if you will, mom and dad. I ended up divorcing. I was born in the 50s, raised in the 60s and early 70s. I grew up in the, what I call the Melissa Manchester generation. Don't talk out loud, learn how to hide your feelings, keep your feelings inside. That is the generation that I came from, understanding too that in the black culture we were told whatever happens in the home stays in the home, it does not go outside the home. And understanding that molestation or child abuse or what have you has been around for decades, but it was never talked about. My dad talked about it a little bit, and I remember he told us a story about a family in West Virginia. He was actually from West Virginia, and the father had a relationship with his daughter, and the daughter ended up pregnant. Well, she gave birth to this baby, but as it turns out, it was a monstrosity. So the baby was actually taken out to the backyard alive, and it was buried by the father. So my father told me stories about that, and so finally, with me, what happened was between the ages of 9 through 11, I was molested by my oldest brother, my second oldest brother, who was 7 years older than I. It started at the age of 9 for me, between the ages of 9 through 11. And I carried the shame. There was, of course, anal penetration. And being at that age, I knew that something was awry, but I could not really articulate. And of course, I never told anyone until I got older about what was going on. And in the family structure, again, you think, well, kids are exploring. No, that's not normal. That's out of order. It's a learned behavior, which tells me that something probably happened to my brother, and the pathology followed. I kept it a secret for a number of years, and the only reason why I was able to get out of it is because my father had remarried, and in 1969, my mom had a nervous breakdown, and she was institutionalized for a while. So my sister and I ended up going to live with my father and his new wife for the rest of our years until I was able to graduate from high school and college. I kept the secret, I buried it. I remember in 1969, I had a mind battle going on, and I remember being in the room after my mom's nervous breakdown and living with my stepmom and my dad. There was something that allowed this information to be buried. I don't know how I did it, but I did it. Even though the subconscious mind reminded me periodically of what had happened to me. Well, I carried the shame well into high school, well into college, and I remember my last year of college, I started having suicidal ideations. The thought of suicide stayed in my mind. It was constant with me, and it followed me even into my 20s. And I finally realized that whatever happens to you as a child, primarily between the ages of 2 to 7, I believe, the trauma, it follows you into adulthood. And if it's not dealt with, it takes on different forms. That's why people get into drugs and alcohol. For me, I try to be the good kid. I try to be compliant. I try to be the nice kid. For my parents, I did everything they wanted me to do. I was going into pre-med, but I did it primarily for my dad. And so finally, after a while, I changed my major and went into business, but it wasn't until I moved here when my nephew was murdered by a 13-year-old kid, he was 19, that I decided to go into law enforcement. Well, having been in this, having these rap sessions, one day I decided, hey, I need to be an open book. I have about 80 people in the room here, primarily black. A lot of young men come in. We don't know how to really express our anger. So let me open up and talk about it. So that particular day, about 8 years ago, in the rap session, I opened up and I told them what had happened to me. And remember, someone laughed. And I don't know if they laughed because it could have happened to them, but it was at that point that I knew that I must continue to tell this story. And in response to that, after I told the story, young brothers started coming up to me. A lot of them had carried that shame for a number of years, never telling anyone, because again, you live in a male-dominated society, and we're taught even as boys, be tough. You're not supposed to allow anyone to do anything, any harmful things to you. But as a kid, you don't have that power. So these young men began to come up to me. Young men, older men, Mr. Brown, I've gone through the same thing. So that started the wheel, or set the wheel in motion for me, that I, like the other gentleman, will devote the rest of my life to telling the story in order that others might be free. I do understand that regionally, a lot of this energy, I don't know what it is, but a lot of this incest takes place a lot in the state of Maine, West Virginia, Alabama, places like that. I cannot fully figure it out, but there is a pathology to it. Not only for men, but for women. Women are now really beginning to come out with the information. And I'm saying that because my mother was molested by 4 neighborhood boys, but she carried that secret almost to her grave, and she finally talked about it the last year before she died. But she carried that with her, but in carrying that with her, she rendered her daughter powerless, who 30 years later went through the same thing, having been molested by 4 neighborhood boys in the neighborhood. So if you don't talk about it, if you don't tell on it, the cycle of abuse will continue. It's sort of like you bring that energy to you. So this has been good for me. I'm empowered. I went through therapy. That's something that we don't really do a lot of in the black community. We're told, tell it to Jesus and everything will be okay. Well, we need to understand that God works through people. Medical professions, we need therapy. We need help, and we need to be heard. We as men, again, we're taught, keep it inside, man up. No, that has nothing to do with it. I have seen brothers come in, and they have talked to me about their lives, and under the veneer of all of their pain and anger, they begin to open up and they begin to cry. And I encourage them. A man who has no heart is one who cannot cry. You have a heart, you have tear ducts. It's okay for you to cry. It's okay to let go of that energy. So again, I fought my way back for myself from cancer in 2002, having been diagnosed with cancer. And I went through treatment and all of that, but the cancer came back. And the doctors told me that you only have a short period to live. They told me that over the phone. So they said, go home, get your house in order, and your days are limited. But it was at that point that I needed to forgive. Forgiveness is not a weakness, it's a strength. And I had to forgive several people, including my brother, having written him, even having to confront him. But I knew that for me, I had to forgive him, not so much for him, but for myself. And as a result, in the forgiveness, the healing came. So here I am, 2019, cancer-free after all of these years. So there is strength in forgiveness. That's about it. I think I've taken up enough time. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Brown. I am in awe, just from all of you, because we all directly or indirectly have experienced abuse. And this has literally opened my eyes. Our family, we go home and we talk. We're conversing more because we feel that there's a need to make sure that we are having these dialogues more often than not because we are now a lot more aware of the type of effect that it's having on our communities, and especially our men. As women, we need to be clear about the effects of abuse on our men and our children, our boys. So we are really, really grateful that you all have elected to spend your time with us this evening.
When I first came here to Atlanta, one of the hottest poets that I've come to know, and I know a lot of poets. I've been on the circuit for over 25 years, and this brother is phenomenal. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Sincere. Give it up, ladies and gentlemen.
We are here to celebrate life and the miracle that it represents, each body, each mind divinely sent, but somewhere along the lines we forget that we are all made in a likeness. So to all that can hear, listen to this. Never forget to celebrate. Celebrate life and love. Celebrate each other. Celebrate as if my mother was your mother, the symbol of strength, one of the reasons why I love her. So we are here, all created by a creator to love one another, but somehow, sometimes we despise of, we hate on, and we judge one another. However, let us never forget that we are all linked through spirit, so it's okay to see that next man or woman as your kin. I am reminded of a time when all I can recollect is joy. Celebrating life is all I can remember, and happiness is gainfully employed, but somewhere along the way, we all get caught up in this life. We lose the joy and all the happiness goes away. I say, but somewhere along the way, we all get caught up in this life. We lose the joy and all the happiness goes away. But I also say, for your sake, don't let that be your fate. You see, regardless of how you see life, we shall all leave here one day. So I am here to celebrate life and the miracle that it represents, each body, each mind divinely sent. But somewhere along the lines, we forget to celebrate. So let us not forget to celebrate. So in conclusion, there's only one question. Is a life that you live worthy of the celebration? Thank you.
Once again, we'd like to thank you, all of our audience members and our viewers, to the Resolving Family Conflict live web series. And Felicia, you talked about, as we were going about and as we were putting this thing together, all of the individuals that we have met. And I was astonished as a man to hear of all the stories of other men and how they were so quick to open up. It's almost as if they were bursting to tell their stories, to allow that infection to be out of them, to get it out so that they can be free. And for me, I have also an experience that I only shared with Felicia the first time ever. I haven't shared with anybody, and it was interesting when the panelists talked about a lot of the first encounters of the expression of this assault upon them were to women. And as we were putting this together, I really didn't think about it. As you guys mentioned, it was buried deep, with things piled on top of it. And as we started to uncover some things, as we started to do research and talk to the various individuals who are also dealing with this subject matter, it made me think, wow, because I was molested by my babysitter, which was a female, when I was very young. And I had my first sexual encounter because of that with another little girl. It was oral sex. You know, we were playing and I kind of got her to come, and we went to a secluded place and I exposed myself and I was like, here, put your mouth on it. And as I look back, as we were doing all of this, well, it was funny to my family. Everybody laughed about it and what have you. But as I think about it now, as a 50-year-old man who has 3 daughters and a granddaughter, I realized that it impacted me. Not my sexuality, because it wasn't done by a man, but my understanding of sex. And this is the role that I thought women should do. So it was nothing for me to expect a woman to deal with me in that certain way. And when I look at all of my life, because I'm a type of person that was always, I'm quiet, I'm observant, and I spent a lot of time reflecting. And as I look back, I was like, wow. So this is why this happened. This is why I think this way. This is why I deal with women in a certain way. And to me, it wasn't taboo, you know, but now as I see, like you gentlemen said, my relationships could have been different. They could have been more fruitful. They could have been healthier. I was an unstable person. And I don't know if that pointed me to, because most of my life I've worked with individuals, namely men who are broken, men who are homeless, and men who go through various things, men who are outcasts, you know, who at their last wit don't know if they even have the purpose in their life to live on. And I've always been drawn to brokenness. And somebody told me, it's amazing how information causes revelation. Now I see why I'm attracted to brokenness, because I was broken. And only through helping others did it help me to heal. And it helped me to see myself. So I'm excited that we've had this conversation, and it feels good that when you're kind of reluctantly wanting to tell somebody what happened to you, because like you said, as men, if this happened to a woman, they were undoubtedly a victim. If it happens to a man, you're weak, you might be gay, you brought it on, it was your fault. And we are fighting a lot of battles within our minds. You know, and as a man thinketh, so is he. So I'm glad that we were able to have this discussion. And I never had men in my life that I could really go to and trust. I was raised by women. There were strong women in my family. So to go to a man that I can trust and feel comfortable and say, hey, and express my vulnerabilities and be transparent was a no-go. But we understand healing can take place at any time. And sometimes you have to extend yourself for someone to extend themselves to you. So I thank you guys for being here. And it helps me, and I feel safe. This is a safe place. And at least I know if nobody else understands me, these two understand me. And sometimes all it takes is one.
That's right.
You know, if we can find one person to confide in, one person to feel safe around, then it helps us to be a better person, to heal, to open up, and to be on the path and on the road to becoming who we were destined to be. So I'd like to thank you guys once again for coming out and telling your stories.
Thanks for sharing, Rob.
Thank you for allowing me to share.
All right. So we'd like to go ahead and take some of our questions.
Okay, this is a question from someone that asks, how should the anger be dealt with? And panelists, you can start.
And the
Just
question
repeat the
was,
question, yes.
how
should the anger be dealt with?
how about we revise that and ask the panelists how they dealt with their anger specifically, because it's individual.
You got it, Professor Simone.
That's an interesting question. First is acknowledgement. That with men, that's the one emotion we're okay with feeling is anger. But a lot of times it's displayed in different ways. I often tell people there's no such thing as silence. Silence is not the absence of sound, but it's the inability to hear it. And as a result of that, a lot of men, we either turn to violence, sex, maybe drugs. So anger, one thing is acknowledging that it's anger, but when you're in this state, you don't realize that it's really anger. You just feel the anger. And so the educating yourself about the trauma that has happened to you, I would say, is the first key to understanding why you're angry. Because if you're not knowledgeable as to why you're angry, that anger will display and communicate itself in different ways. And so it may not look like you're angry. It may come out in your relationship or through domestic violence on another person. Because I always tell people, silence leads to violence. When you hold anger in, and violence that's held inside is violence against the self, and violence that's projected out is violence against others in the community. So there's no such thing as holding it in. You're not holding it in. It's there. You're just going to communicate it in destructive ways. So the first thing I would say is educate yourself on why do you feel the anger. Acknowledge it's there, and try to figure out why it's there, and seek help as to how to deal with it.
I think, one of you, if you will, correct me if I'm incorrect about this, but I believe that depression, for myself, there was a lot of depression. Most of my adult life, not even for my adult life, going all the way back when I think back, I was actually depressed in junior high and high school. And I learned that depression is basically anger turned inward. It's unexpressed anger, we hold it in, and it does come out of different forms, but a lot of times depression, and they've done a study here in South DeKalb County that a lot of people in South DeKalb County, I don't know how they came up with the statistics, are actually depressed. And I think in the black community, unexpressed anger again, anger turned inward, situational anger or situational depression, if you will. I was primarily angry at myself. I blamed myself, and there was a lot of self-anger and even a self-hatred. For a long time, I couldn't even go back and look at pictures of myself growing up, high school pictures or what have you, because there was an anger there, there was a hatred there that was inflicted. So I took it out on myself. But it wasn't until going through therapy that the little boy in me said, you know what, it's okay. We're going to go through this together. We're going to get through the anger. We're going to express it in a safe environment. And that's what I did clinically going through therapy. That's where I was able to actually express my anger, because in our culture, again, I could have gone to my brother, I could have gotten in his face and all of that, it could have exacerbated the situation. But having gone through the therapy, if you will, I was able to confront him, and I was able to stay in control.
So you confronted him without being confrontational.
Absolutely. Now, there was a part of me that wanted to split a split.
Next question.
Next question. Okay. What advice would you give a young boy / adult man experiencing sexual abuse or molestation in their lives right now? Do I need to repeat that, or?
Well, the question was, how would you,
What advice
would you give a young boy who's dealing with this type of thing in their life right now?
Yes.
That's kind of difficult to answer, because you wouldn't know what type of experience, like in my family, you didn't talk about things. And so the advice I would give them is to seek out someone that they trust, that they can confide in. And, it's different for every person. Like some people are not ready to actually come forward and say this is happening to me. And as a law enforcement officer, one of the things that I learned that as law enforcement, we used to re-traumatize victims because we always asked them who, what, when, where, why, and we took over the investigation, never giving them an opportunity to partake in their own investigation. Let them control the investigation, because the one thing that is taken away from abuse victims is power. And so, so a lot of times when you ask that question, what advice would I give them? It would be to find somebody they can trust to tell, because telling that's a courageous act. And what you don't want to happen is, as an investigator, what I used to tell parents, because I don't have children, so when parents hear that their child was molested, they automatically get angry, yell, and scream. Well, this is what the molester has been telling the child, right? If you tell, you're going to get in trouble. And so when that response comes, you know, one of the things I teach as an investigator is what I call sound investigations. Because I teach investigators or people how to listen for abuse rather than look for it. Because by the time abuse happens, the effects of abuse have already taken shape. But there are sounds that children make, like I made when I was little. I went from a quiet kid to a destructive kid, fighting all the time. I also went, my grades went down. All these things were my way of communicating, hey, something's not right with me, right? And I see it all the time in school where teachers, you know, judge kids who are actually trying to communicate, hey, I live in an abusive environment. So my advice would be to go to somebody that you trust. So it's kind of difficult to answer that question because I don't know how victims process the information. They process it differently. But definitely seek help and seek someone you can trust to tell.
And I agree with it, and I just wanted to add to this, you know, I think as a community, again, we have to get really, really involved. It does take a village, all right? And even for law enforcement, and I'd be the first one to say, you know, that law enforcement is actually there to protect and to serve. And we should be able to trust law enforcement. I've noticed here lately that they've even taken it off the cars in DeKalb County to protect and to serve. So if you cannot trust law enforcement, for me, my first inclination would be, if that's happening, that needs to be reported. A crime has been committed. All right, so we have to get law enforcement on the same page here. As a community, they're an integral part of our community. And they need to get involved, not for the sake of allowing them to become re-victimized, like they've done with women. All right, we've got to get on the same page, and the only way this can happen is by hearing from you, from hearing from the community, if you will, so that change can be brought about. But again, for me, I would have to say this has to be reported to law enforcement.
Can I add one more thing? That question itself puts the responsibility on the child. And what I try to teach is that in theory, the way things are now, we hold children responsible to stop their own abuse. Because until they say something, the abuse continues. So part of that answer would come from what we're doing tonight, educating ourselves on some of the behaviors and symptoms and things that we may see that causes us to ask questions. Because sometimes kids act out, that's how they communicate. Hey, can you ask me what's wrong with me? Right? I did when I was little. I started cutting class. I just became a bad kid. No one stopped me and said, hey, are you okay? Can you tell me what's going on? That one question probably would open the door to my telling my story earlier. So what I want to say is we ask, what can the child do? It's almost like victim blaming, right? Waiting for the victim to get the courage to tell so that abuse can stop. I think we as adults in the community, we need to educate ourselves on the effects of abuse so that we can become proactive in stopping abuse before it even happens.
And while we have you, would you give us some details on how we as adults, parents, how we can actively listen and how we can educate ourselves outside of, you know, these random topics being held like this, because clearly this is something that's long overdue.
Yeah, that's wonderful. One of the things is grooming behaviors. You know, as an investigator, that's one thing I used to always investigate. You know, when a child comes in and say they were molested, I talk about how the person who molested, how were they treating the child. where they let the child stay past curfew when the mom said no, when they give the child ice cream when the mom says no, and most parents are shocked when they find out the person that they brought to their home was molesting their children, because they're the ones who saying he was the one letting her do all the things I told her she couldn't do. Well, he was grooming her, he was grooming him. And so part of it is actually go to websites, that organization out there that educates you. My organization, Dwell Project, that's what we specialize in. And my whole thing was, I travel all around the country speaking to professionals. But as I tell them, information in this room, what good is if it's not going out to the people that it's affecting the most. And so my thing is, I've tried to go to churches, and churches said, no, we'll wait till it happens. Jesus lives here, right? We're going to pray about it, right? I've had situations where I had cases where pastors would bring the mother, the abuser, and the child in the room and pray, and then send them all back to the same house, right? So I think the institutions that we visit, the churches, the schools, we need to get involved in holding people accountable. One of the things that I'm pushing, with this lawyers legislation that we require people to get educated on trauma. You get a driver's license, you need a license, a certificate of education from a child advocate center showing that you were educated in trauma. If you want to get married, you need that certificate. If you want to get a gun license or liquor license, whatever license you're trying to get in that county, you need to pay the child advocacy center to train you in trauma and how. And here's the thing I'm gonna say, I'm gonna get in trouble for it, but I'm gonna say it anyway. Discipline, parenting practice. When it comes to, I can only speak to the African American community, that beating and certain disciplinary practices are actually harming our children, causing the damage that we saying we trying to prevent. And it's also, I tell people this too, it's amazing to me that we use the same methodology that the slave owners used to control our own children. And then we wonder where violence is coming from, right? So that is part of the education. We need to learn different parenting practices, right? So we're teaching our kids violence, that when they don't do what we say do, we beat them. So when they don't get what they want, when they say they want it, then they do the same thing to other people.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate that. And I like something you said before, the sound of silence. Because a lot of times, in my line of work and the type person I am, I've learned to hear what's not being said. And as you talked about, parents need to be more involved and aware. We need to understand our children's behaviors. We know our children better than anybody, or we should. So we should understand when they're out of character, so to speak. Be aware of what's going on. Know who their friends are. Know what they're involved in. Know what they're exposed to. And that's the problem. We kind of step back and let everybody else raise our children, and everybody that we think is raising our children are, doing these things, which lead ultimately to these type of platforms. So I thank you, guys.
So let me say that since you opened the door, I'm gonna get in trouble the music, right? This music, this misogynist music, this rap music that's telling kids to kill each other, shoot each other in the head, and we think that's harmless, right? There's a difference between culture and hip hop, and then you talking about this violent gangster rap, right? If that gets in your kids' hearing, and they continue to live, they think it's cool. They think it's cool. I mean, there are people making billions of dollars off of, video games, and nobody's saying anything. But you put in a video game. In one of the cases I worked with, a little boy, he was 7 years old, he learned how to perform oral sex because he was playing Grand Theft Auto, and in Grand Theft Auto, you can pull a car over, steal a car, go up to a woman, snatch her in the car, and force her to perform oral sex, and kick her out the car and speed off. And so we're not holding people accountable for these things they're putting out in the atmosphere for our children. They're actually selling violence to our children. And we're consumers of it. We're celebrating people. And I'm going to go ahead and say it. R. Kelly. We celebrating people, we're defending people who have predatory behavior. And when we say something about it, you'll sell out or you don't know what you're talking about. Well, there's a connection there. It's a connection there. And if we continue to pretend that it's not, it's going to continue to rob our children of their lives. So, you open it, I said it.
That's the beauty of this type of platform.
sir.
We have nobody over us saying, you can't say this, you
Yeah.
can't say that.
Yeah,
That's why we don't know what's going on, because we're not being able to be exposed to certain things.
that's true.
And we mentioned, we use the village analogy probably more loosely than I'm comfortable with. But I know that, it's something that we say because we believe it. But I believe that the missing part in it takes a village is to make sure that you got some good people in that village. You know what I mean? So, we have to be very, very aware of the types of folks that we are allowing around our children. And sometimes I know it may seem harmless. It could be an uncle or an aunt. But if you're talking about an innocent child, and you really have no idea, we're speaking now about men who have kept their secrets for so long. And by the grace of God, they were able to get support, and become the gentlemen that they are today. But we know that there's a flip side to that. Okay, we have to honestly admit that there is a flip side to that, which means we have to be more cognizant of the folks that we are allowing around our children, our nieces, our nephews. You posted something, and I used it for our video, about stop leaving your daughters with anybody, uncles, aunts. We can't discriminate in these areas. So we have to be very aware, and sometimes it may take modification of our lifestyles, really, as well as in terms of what we're allowing them to listen to and what they're watching, but definitely who we're allowing to be in their presence, because we are allowing our children to be robbed of their innocence, and it changes them forever, which in turn changes our communities forever, and we're suffering because of it. So we have so much more to talk about, but we are running out of time. We appreciate the questions. We do want to have an opportunity to allow you to have a dialogue with the panelists, since they have been so gracious to share their stories with us. We do anticipate having our second episode. We are doing this the 4th Thursdays of the month. If you hadn't noticed, Main Street here in Lithonia is actually a set for an upcoming film. That's why if you didn't notice, everything, a television show, excuse me. So, everything looks very, it looks nice. I wasn't going to say that. I can't say that. It was nice, sir. It's cleaned up, And we were fortunate enough to land during the filming. But we will not be able to have it, unfortunately, at Black Dot because they have already booked the filming there. So we are looking for a host. So if you or our viewers know anyone who may be interested, our next topic is about infidelity
And family secrets.
and how it affects children.
Yeah.
Okay, because what we are interested in doing is figuring out ways to dialogue about reconnecting our families. And we know that these types of topics and this content is stuff that, we only talk about it when the dirt rises or when someone's on their deathbed, and we have to ensure that our children are comfortable communicating with us now. And we have to be comfortable, more comfortable than we are communicating with each other and our children and understanding the ramifications of some of our behavior, okay, or the lack thereof. And we're going to conclude with, first and foremost, I have to again thank our wonderful, wonderful counselors who decided to grace our presence. They are here as resources. That is Dr. Casey Powell and Shakita Bruce Robinson. We thank them so much, and they are here. They are resources. We also have a resource table in the back that provides details and information about places where you can go. Gives us some little slips about sharing information, listening, helping others go to a safe place. So we just all, again, want to be very much aware and again, listen to some of those cues like Mr. Brown and Mr. McNeil guided us through. And before we close out, are you closing us out?
I don't know, but also, I don't know. I do as I'm told. You know, we're here to provide a platform to help those in life, but also I just want to mention Legacy Hope Group, insurance. If you're not insured, you need to talk about somebody about insurance, please do so. That way you can help your family in your death, because we're all going to die. And that's one thing we don't need to be stressed about, or you don't need to be stressed about, and that's a burden we don't need to leave in our family. But we're glad that you have tuned in and that all you have come out to the Resolving Family Conflicts web series, the live web series, the first of 10 episodes. We hope that you have been informed, we hope that you have been educated, and we hope that you have been empowered. And remember that anything covered cannot heal. So let your heart not suffer from the decisions of your mind, and let your feet not wander through meandering times. And let all your dreams bring you a good night's rest, and let that which you seek after be that which you get. So let's continue to discuss the damage, tell the truth, and heal the hurt together. Thank you.
One of our first sponsors is Dr. Tracy Powell, and she's with PracticalLeadershipForYou.com. She's an author, speaker, and transformation coach, and she helps her clients to uncover and activate their leadership capabilities and transform their stories and ideas into books and successful businesses. Another one of our partners is Shakita Robinson Bruce from Open Arms Counseling Center. And Mrs. Robinson Bruce, her company is dedicated to helping African American women overcome shame, anger, and heal from past hurt in order to live their best lives. Helen Bohanna and Bohanna Marketing and Consulting Agency. We have John Brown from Philly Go Flow, the PhillyGoFlow.com radio show. We also have Darlene Jackson from Legacy Hope Group. Of course, we have Real Talk to You with, and we have some travel agents from IntelliTravel who are also in the building.